name is Yann Krysinski. I'm the CEO of Solideo. Solideo is the ad hoc government agency that was created with two missions. The first one is to build 70 projects that are required to host the Paris 2024 Olympic and Paralympic Games. And the second mission is to repurpose those projects after the Games to open them to the public. And we located most of these 70 projects in the northern part of the Paris metropolitan area for two reasons. The first one is that it made sense to locate those near existing competition sites like the Stade de France to reduce the athletes' travel time. And the second reason is that the Olympics are a great excuse to heavily invest in that northern part of the metropolitan area of Paris, which historically has lacked public or private investments. The legacy of the Games is enormous. It's 4.5 billion euros of construction that was invested in these 70 projects, and those include 4,000 housing units, which will open in a couple weeks to the public, 8 swimming pools that were built or renovated, several bridges, as well as 10 schools. If we take a step back and remember the night of the opening ceremony on July 26, 2024, everyone was amazed by the sheer beauty of those venues. But many forgot that it's actually quite unusual to deliver such a large program on time, on budget, and on scope. Several studies have looked at the performance of such mega projects, and they conclude that very few of them are delivered on time, on budget, and on scope, usually fewer than 1%. And the performance of Olympic projects among those is actually not great. Over the past couple decades, there's an average cost overrun of over 150%. So, were we facing an almost impossible task? If I summarize that task, we had to deliver 4.5 billion euros of construction in just 4 years, starting from a blank slate because we created an ad hoc government agency. The 3 project parameters, budget, scope, and schedule, were fixed. And we were also requested to be innovative, especially in terms of climate resilient design. Several entities have been working towards that goal. The first one is Solideo, in charge of the construction. The second entity is Paris 2024, in charge of the operations. They are the event organizer. And last but not least, the legacy stakeholders. Those are all the mostly public entities that will inherit those projects after the Games. They will get the keys. They will own and operate these projects. And what's a little unusual for the Paris 2024 program is that we put them in charge of delivering some of these. So they became delivery partners, and we did that for one key strategic goal: to make sure that the project would be designed with legacy in mind. So we have a total of 13 funding partners and 33 delivery partners, so many stakeholders, which makes the coordination, which is our task, quite fun but challenging. Before diving into how we achieved the results, let's talk about what results we achieved. First of all, we delivered on time, as you know, we delivered on budget, but also we delivered to the highest standards possible in terms of construction. First, on the social side of things, we reduced the construction accident frequency rate 4 times compared to the national average. We also allocated a very large number of hours to people who've been far from employment, more than 10% of the hours spent on site. And last but not least, we awarded 36% of our construction contracts to small and mid-sized companies, which is proof that they can also deliver to the highest standards possible. In terms of the environmental performance, we wanted to show that France can build a city with a very high level of environmental sustainability. And our strategy included 4 components. The first one is to reduce the carbon footprint. And we achieved that through using naturally sourced material like wood. We also achieved that through the circular economy, and we were actually able to recycle or upcycle up to 96% of materials from existing sites that we had to demolish. A climate resilient design was also a key component, and we were able to design buildings that will be comfortable places to live in 2050. And finally, in terms of biodiversity, we wanted to bring nature back into the city. And we did that through several things, such as planting more than 9,000 trees in the athletes' village, which will provide shades for pedestrians in the summer in the future. And our last goal in terms of those very high construction standards is universal accessibility. We wanted to show that you can design facilities, venues that are accessible to everybody, and that you can do that within the time and budget constraints that we had. Now let's dive into how we achieved this. And I'm going to share with you some of those lessons learned from our experience that I think could be reused in the future in other projects. The first idea is the soft power. We had to hire the right people who had in themselves a level of courage and resilience that was actually required when you have to deliver such a project that faced a lot of unforeseen events. Once you've found the right leaders, the right project managers, one other idea that was key in our success is to think slow and act fast. And what I mean by that is that despite the huge schedule pressure, you need to take time to properly set up the project. And that setup includes 3 components. The first one is a technical setup. You have to put into writing the functional and technical requirements from the end users and make sure that those requirements can be met within the time and budget constraints. The second component of that setup is stakeholder management. And as I was mentioning, we did something that's a little unusual, but I think that was instrumental in our success. We put the legacy stakeholders in charge of delivering some of these projects, but that required us to implement a very transparent alert system in case any of those projects would derail, so that Solideo could take over the project if necessary as required by the law. And we didn't have to do that, but it was a possibility. And the last component of the setup is processes and systems, and that really shouldn't be overlooked. We didn't use off-the-shelf systems. We took the time, despite the huge schedule pressure, to design our own processes and systems that were well tailored to the specifics of the games. The second idea that I wanted to share with you is risk management. And we had a very concrete and operational approach to risk management. And by that, I mean that each time for a critical venue, each time we had a high impact risk with even a low probability of occurrence, we designed, we financed a plan B, or even sometimes a plan C. We went to the market to get construction companies ready to kick off that plan B if necessary. Basically, we avoided the pitfall of thinking that plan A would miraculously fall back on track. Another idea I want to share with you is scope change management. A lot of projects, even when they're well managed, can be derailed due to late scope changes. We avoided that through two things. The first one is that we got the end user's requirements right and in a fairly high level of details in contracts. And the second thing that we did is a change management process that involved the executive level of each of the stakeholders involved based on a high impact analysis by the project team. Another idea that I want to share with you is the decision-making process. A lot of projects are not delivered on time due to the fact that necessary decisions are not made in a timely manner. We avoided that pitfall through two things. The first one is that we put in our contracts a binding decision-making process. So we had to make certain decisions by a certain date for each of the projects. And to support those decisions, we put in place a transparent alert system based on a limited number of indicators that we selected to be clear, understandable by everybody, and that should reflect the actual status of each project. Basically, reporting became a task of strategic value to support an efficient decision-making process. Finally, this would not have been possible without starting from a blank state. There was a political decision that was quite visionary at the very beginning in 2017, which was to create an ad hoc government agency, and that gave me all the freedom to implement some of those ideas that I shared with you and implement them in a way that was very specific and well tailored to this project. In conclusion, I think that a lot of those lessons learned that I shared with you today could be reused on other large, complex projects around the world.